Hello, Zer0 Books readers. It's me again, Douglas Lane. This time I'm coming to you from the darkest corner of the dark web in an effort to deliver some forbidden knowledge. For example, I know this is a controversial thing to say, and it makes a lot of politically correct establishment types angry, but one coat equals 20 yards of linen. There's a new group of renegade intellectuals who are daring to violate taboos, question liberal pieties, and closely examine the social issues and contradictions we're faced with in 2018. They are, as the New York Times reported, an ideologically diverse bunch with little to nothing in common politically. The only thing they have in common is their stalwart commitment to rigorous intellectual debate and the social costs that they're willing to withstand in order to arrive at the truth. Oh, and one other thing.
I don't think that you can understand the current situation properly without considering the role that postmodernism plays in this. Because postmodernism, in many ways, especially as it's played out politically, is the new skin that the old Marxism now inhabits.
For this direct message, though, I don't want to focus on the flaws of identity politics. Instead, I want to focus on one of the other topics I just mentioned, socialism. The amount of people I see talking about socialism positively is actually staggering.
My department had asked me to teach a course in feminist theory, and I thought, oh, well, I'm a feminist, a theorist, and I sent away for the various texts. And it was all sort of warmed over Marxism. They had crossed out class and put gender, very angry at our society, and saying impossibly silly things.
Well, you ain't done nothing if you ain't been called a red, if you marched or agitated,
That's right, red baiting and a hatred of Marx and Marxism is the unifying theme for these mavericks. For instance, on May 1st, Jason Barker, the Zer0 Books author behind the novel Marx Returns, managed to land a birthday greeting for Karl in the New York Times. And just like ringing a bell, the dark web sprang into action. Absolutely unbelievable. After the death of 100 million and the Cold War, this still constitutes a viable opinion? James Woods joined in by calling the New York Times America's Pravda. Glenn Beck banged his head against his keyboard several times and produced a blog post, while Ben Shapiro sat behind his desk and opined.
Jason Barker, he's an associate professor of philosophy over at a South Korean university. And the piece is called, Happy Birthday, Karl Marx, You Were Right. And there's a picture of a giant statue of Karl Marx. Okay, not only was Karl Marx not right, Karl Marx's idiotic philosophy led to the deaths of well over 100 million people during the 20th century alone. So if that's right, then I don't want to be right anytime soon. But here is what this professor writes. Rare were the radical thinkers of the major European capitals of his day that he either failed to meet or had failed to break with on theoretical grounds. And then he talks about all of his intellectual influences. And he says, in 1837, Marx reneged on the legal career that his father, himself a lawyer, had mapped out for him and immersed himself instead in the speculative philosophy of G.W.F. Hegel at the University of Berlin. If you've never read Hegelian philosophy, don't worry about it. It's incredibly abstruse and difficult to read, but the basic idea of Hegelian philosophy is that God is present in history, and that history is essentially a progression from synthesis and from thesis and antithesis to synthesis. In other words, there's one position, the opposite position, they fight with each other, and the result is a synthesis of the best of both positions, and therefore history is constantly moving in a progressive direction. That is Hegelianism in two sentences right there.
This latest crop of red baiters and Marx haters will take potshots at professors and philosophers who praise Marx's critique of political economy. But what they won't do is the very thing they're famous for insisting that everyone needs to do. Seriously engage with the diversity of ideas, even ones they find disagreeable. The really sad thing is that the dark web is refusing debate precisely when a serious engagement with some of their ideas is necessary. For example, the idea that Peterson's audience is made up of white men who are still clinging to their unearned social prestige isn't entirely wrong. However, it misses quite a bit of the picture. The difficulty that Peterson is vaguely pointing at, but which he won't quite let himself pin down, is this one. We no longer have a set of human norms that dictate who gains social prestige, but rather we have a wholly abstract system of profit-making that only offers the image of status. We have become unmoored. The old values have been dashed, and God is dead. This means that neither those who currently hold positions of power nor those who strive to replace them can legitimize themselves except by referencing statistics. A YouTuber is legitimate to the degree that he has a large number of subscribers. A Twitter celebrity is legitimate to the extent that she has a lot of followers. A university professor is legitimate to the degree that she is cited. A movie is significant to the extent that it dominates the box office returns. A song is good to the extent to which it goes viral. The realm of the social, of shared cultural values, has been disrupted. But this too is not entirely a bad thing. As Marx wrote in the Communist Manifesto, constant revolutionizing of production, uninterrupted disturbances of all social conditions, everlasting uncertainty and agitation distinguish the bourgeois epoch from all earlier ones. All fixed, fast-frozen relations, with their train of ancient and venerable prejudices and opinions, are swept away. All new-formed ones become antiquated before they can ossify. All that is solid melts into air. All that is wholly profaned. And man is at last compelled to face with sober senses his real conditions of life and his relations with his kind. Or, as Jordan Peterson might put it, the world and social life no longer give us meaning and direction. It's up to us to build a meaning for our lives, both as individuals and collectively. This new intellectual dark web is not up to the task of even thinking about what might be entailed in a new project to create a direction for humanity. As much as they claim to champion free speech and rigorous debate, they have set up barricades against their critics. For instance, when Jordan Peterson visited Seattle, he neither signed his books nor took unscreened questions from the audience. I was disappointed, as I'd made the trek from Portland specifically to ask him a question. In December of last year, I scheduled a time to interview Peterson on the podcast for Zer0 Books. His publicist scheduled a time for a debate, but subsequently canceled. After this, Peterson appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Have you ever debated a Marxist supporter? Have you ever debated someone who is pro-equality of outcome?
No, they don't debate me. No, I haven't, because people don't do it. They don't ask me to do it.
Will Peterson, or anyone from the intellectual dark web, attempt to live up to their rhetoric about free speech? I doubt it. It's up to us on the neo-Marxist left to press on without them. However, some of the arguments they put forward provide us with a good jumping off point, and in the next video, I'll try to address their primary assertion, namely that critical theory, or Marxism, views social life as a power struggle between oppressors and the oppressed. We'll take a look at whether, or to what extent, this is true, and where a Marxist conception of class really leads. Thanks for watching this Zer0 Books video. If you enjoyed it, then you should click on that like button. While I'm plugging things, I'll remind you that the book Marx Returns was featured in this video. Go find a copy online, at your local bookstore, or at your local library. You might also click subscribe, because YouTube sometimes tells our subscribers when we put up a new video. Finally, if you're not a patron of our insider podcast called Inside Zer0 Books, you should be. Support us on Patreon today. That's how we fund our video and other digital content production.